This fall, we are launching one of our newest concentrations, Restaurant Management and Experiences, in our master's program, MMH, Master of Management in Hospitality. Courses in this concentration include The Future of Restaurant Business, a course in financial modeling and economics of the industry, Advanced Food and Beverage Operations and Experiences, which explores concepts, service models, technology, and automation to better understand the operation of a restaurant. And there are other electives such as food marketing, design thinking, and entrepreneurship. We're currently accepting applications, so if you're interested, please contact us. Now I'm pleased to introduce Kealoha Pomerantz, graduate from our very first class of MMH. She is Culture and Operations Manager for RealFood Consulting, having worked with them for about 4 years. Prior to that, she has experience in Hillstone restaurants and smart meetings, among others. We are very proud of her accomplishments and looking forward to see what she does in the future. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the panel. So Kealoha, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tina Mesa. I'm very excited about this restaurant concentration. I wish it were there when I was there. So I encourage anyone interested to sign up. I'm also thrilled to introduce our guests for today's conversation and panel. We selected all of them very intentionally. They have very diverse backgrounds and very diverse, passionate perspectives on this topic and on this industry, which is the future of restaurants. So just a small goal, right, to cover in an hour. So I'd love to introduce them and then set the stage a little bit for our conversation. First, we have Frank Schuetzendorf, who has built his 25-year international hospitality career within really the high-end luxury hotel market. In 2016, he transitioned really out of that into the world of hospitality education, and he's taught at leading institutions in Europe, hospitality schools in Europe, as well as being actively involved in a lot of forward-thinking hospitality entrepreneurship projects. He brings an academic perspective and a French point of view, which is always fun. And he is also with Essec, the partner school that BU MMH students are able to study and really converse with and collaborate with. So that's really wonderful. We also have Kiana Estevez, who is determined to create solutions that are inclusive and empathetic through experiential dining. So she's recently created IO Mine, which is a social food movement that empowers people to step outside their comfort zones and really equalize the cultural differences through virtual community experiences. So she brings an exceptional entrepreneurial perspective and very much a proud Gen Z perspective, which I always love to hear. We also have Parker Doyle on the call today, who joined the Moseley Group over 3 years ago and is already very much a leader in their innovation and project management space across the firm's very holistic and integrated disciplines of expertise. He's supported client initiatives across multiple operating segments, both domestically and internationally, and he has a passion for transforming the way the world perceives and interacts with food and beverage. So his view is many things, but for this panel, that of a strategist and a consultant, right? That sort of 30,000-foot view, the broad view of this industry, which I think is critical right now. And last but certainly not least, Derek Domino has been in the restaurant technology industry for over 8 years. In 2013, he was one of the founding team members at Toast, the POS company, and helped them scale to an $8 billion+ valuation, no small feat. And most recently, helping them launch Toast's digital ordering products. So far before we knew that was going to be vital, including the takeout consumer app. Currently, Derek is the VP of Sales at Bbot, expanding digital ordering into the dining room. So he has just an enormous amount of technical and sales knowledge in the tech space, right? Restaurant tech space, which we all forget about. So I think that's super vital to this conversation. So those are our 4 amazing panelists. And before we jump into the questions, really, I just wanted to, set the stage. I think we all know why we're talking about this, but in case anyone's forgotten, COVID apparently is over in the United States, but it has been a grueling, year and a half for everyone, and certainly, perhaps most of all, restaurants or food service businesses. So for those who have survived, the future looks incredibly uncertain, and there's really no one who is able to give, concrete answers. I don't know that we'll find those answers or the crystal ball in this conversation, but really the goal was to have an engaging dialogue around what the future might look like, and hopefully spark some questions in you all and just some different perspectives on this topic. So hopefully we go a little bit beyond the obvious, right? The questions that are written in all of the articles right now, and really just hear from a broad panel. So I will ask questions, I'll direct them to you, the panelists. I'll tell you which one will be for each of you, but also feel free to jump in if you have something to add. So let's get started. So for our first question, I'd love to hear from Frank and Kiana in either order. Frank, you can go first. How do we get people to really start or stay working in this industry? I think that's probably top of mind for everybody, right? This labor issue. So what do you feel about that?
I think there's been a big shift in the industry. I mean, with the arrival of technology companies, we have a lot of people that kind of seen that it's easier to make money in other industries, but we've kind of forgotten the essential component of what food and beverage and the hospitality is all about. It's really about taking care of people and working with and through people to get the end product to our customers, which is really what it's all about, and to spend time with the customers and connect on a very human level. So it's obviously there's a cultural difference between what's happening in the United States and how operations are run in the United States, as opposed to what's run, for example, in France or in Europe, because we pay salaries here, and it doesn't matter how the operations perform. We get a salary at the end of the month. In the United States, it's more about the minimum wage, and then based on the performance and based on how much volume you produce, you get paid, and you have you can double your salary with the tips. But it's all about also dealing with how we manage those employees and how we retain them. It's a very different mindset that we have going on today with the millennial mindset that we deal with, where we have to be closer to employees, and we have to really engage with them. We have to really allow them to express themselves. And that top-down corporate approach, it just doesn't work anymore today. So that's what we're seeing kind of in the industry. That's the feedback I'm getting with the students I work with that are going into the business as well. To just be extremely creative in how we structure the operation, to also have a vested interest, as an employee. Maybe there's new business models that could develop to have employees become actually shareholders of the company, to really have them be 100% invested in the outcome and to stay on board for a longer period of time. And then above and beyond that, for larger organization, it's also obviously important to work on the company culture, to make it a long-term investment for the employee, and to give them really the impression that it's not only about the money, it's not only about the short term. I'm being developed here, my skills are being developed here, I can become specialized. I mean, look at what happened in the craft beer business. Look at what happened to baristas, for example. There's been this whole level of specialization, and that's something I truly believe that we should focus on in this industry to make it worthwhile to stick around and to really build your career. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point. Carrie, they're part of our industry, but we don't even think about it. We haven't sort of translated that. Interesting. Kiana, how do you think we get people to work here or to stay working?
Yeah, and thanks for setting the stage, Frank. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous. I always just it comes from a place of excitement, and just brings me back to when I ran my first marathon, something that's so, physically and mentally demanding. And I think where we're at right now and having this conversation, I'm going to come in from the dreamer. I'm coming in with that entrepreneur. I am the dreamer. I am cautiously optimistic. So really take that with a grain of salt with what I'm going to share. I think this last year has forced us to step into a place of so much awareness from a cultural appropriation standpoint. And I think really grounding that in with the chef, because chefs are the stars. Chefs are the people who are creating the art inside of our kitchens, inside of restaurants. And we have to, as Frank mentioned, embrace that creativity. the creativity that came out of a time of desperation. And I think when we really can step away from the confines of a restaurant menu of, 3 lines and bringing in cultures that are unreported, cuisines that are unreported, that's what's going to get people into the door. That's what's going to bring this next generation of chefs to truly redefine what a restaurant is. And what we've really seen is such a drive for social media within the food and beverage industry because it's freedom, because there's no borders in the food that you're creating, in the audience that you're sharing your story with. And by embracing that storytelling component inside of a kitchen, it addresses the toxic culture as well that we've seen for so long in this industry. So how do we bring the diversity of stories and the food creators into this space?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we're seeing so much quote unquote more diversification of foods available, but there's an endless number of regional cuisines and of small niche dishes and items that so few people get to discover. So I think that's an excellent point. And I think, as much as we all probably roll our eyes at these trend reports that get put out every year, they are getting away from, tacos being the newest thing to crickets or, things that were historically not known of. So I think that's an excellent point. Thank you. Parker, Derek, do you want to add anything? You feel strongly? Parker's off mute. Here he is.
No, I'm just, it all comes back to the employee. The employee is the most integral part to the consumer journey, and creating brand loyalty really comes back to the small touch points that an employee adds to that consumer experience. And I think that with the introduction of technology, with what you're seeing with Derek at Bbot and what he's done at Toast, he knows better than anybody. Technology is here, but it needs to be used to enhance the consumer experience alongside the experience of the employee. The employee is what leads to everything that the consumer experiences in the restaurant. And it's integral to make sure that the employee has everything they need to succeed in order to give the guests what they want and make sure that frequency is there and they're willing and able and excited to come back.
For sure. So while I have you, Parker, we'll move on to question 2, which is, really how does and Frank touched on this, how does the business model, and this can be interpreted many ways, of restaurants need to change moving forward, right? How can we reimagine this traditional restaurant business model, which is make very little money, work extremely hard, right? Live in the 4 walls. So talk to us about that a little bit, Parker, if you will.
So the questioning of the business model is not just a during and post-pandemic issue. The business model of restaurants has been questioned for decades. Pre-pandemic, we saw restaurants in California that were adding surcharges to cover the rising minimum wage and healthcare costs. And some restaurants had success, but the thing is that often the ones who didn't have success were hiding it at the bottom of the menu and weren't transparent with the costs that were associated with it. And when it comes to an overall business strategy, every restaurant operation and brand is so different. And there's no solution that is one size fits all. And it's extremely important to develop business model strategy that is directly connected to your brand strategy. And what I mean by that is your brand is at the center of everything that you do. Profit sharing, higher wages, tip, non-tips, these all have implications on the brand that you are developing and trying to sell. It's really all interconnected, and a brand is the sum of multiple touch points, all of which matter. And beyond the basics of your business, a strong brand needs to stand for something. And an employee wants to work for a brand that stands for something they believe in, something they want to come to work and really fight for. And that brand needs to have a distinct voice speaking throughout the menu, the store design and communications, and really deliver a differentiated consumer experience. And you really can't have success anymore if you're not an authentic brand, because consumers can sniff that out extremely quickly and easily. So authenticity and speaking from the heart and really proving it, I think is at the core of a business strategy.
Yeah, and I think that answers the other question as well, Carter. I think that's a great point. And when people ask, well, how do I make these decisions about tipping? It comes from your brand, right? It comes from those things you've already decided that you stand for. So Derek, I'd love to hear a little bit from you as well, what you feel about, changing the business model, what that might look like.
Sure. One of the things that's become a cliche, at least in the tech world, is, COVID did not change consumer trends. It accelerated consumer trends by probably 10 years. And, when you look at the adoption of digital ordering, where it was going in a quantum leap, and now it's just where it was going to be 10 years from now anyway. And there might be a dip back down, of course, because of dining in coming back. But for the most part, it's going to stay pretty high. A good mix of all ordering in restaurants is going to be coming from off premise. So one of the things we work with restaurants is, every new business plan that I've seen, COVID really laid bare that you can't just have one revenue stream. You need multiple revenue streams. You need multiple channels. One of the words we say is omni-channel. You need to have a kitchen that can handle orders from multiple sources, different kinds of order types, and different kind of clientele. And if the guest wants something, they want convenience, you have to give them convenience. If they want high touch from your brand, you have to give them high touch. And that's one thing with restaurants that they're figuring out is that how do you have those different kinds of service models, different kinds of guest experiences out of a single restaurant? And that really changes everything, top to bottom from the whole business plan. Most restaurants that we've seen now, they're coming in with a digital first strategy, right? They're thinking through, what is my online presence going to be? How am I going to have direct channels of ordering? How am I going to be handling those orders in the kitchen? What does the floor plan of my space look like? Is it more kitchen focused as opposed to the dining room? Because I'm going to have half of my sales going out the back. What does my access loading zone look like? So I have delivery drivers coming in that they're not in my waiting area. It's changing the whole entire business model. So we're working with a lot of restaurants on how do they renovate their spaces to support this new world, but it also is going to change the real estate landscape. Flagship retail is evolving. Real estate companies are figuring out ways to market their spaces and adding new features like loading dock access and bigger commissions like kitchen spaces. So it's, where is it going? We'll find out. A lot of restaurants are experimenting. That's one of the things that's kind of exciting about right now is, a lot of restaurants went out of business, but that created a lot of green field for new entrepreneurs to come in with new concepts in this new digital age. And, I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, write down the word omnichannel, because I also feel we all strongly agree on that one point, I think, and moving away this historical ego around, I do this and this is how I always did it and that's all I want to do, right? So exactly to Derek's point, if the guest wants it and you would like to make a little bit of money, probably give them what they want. So, reimagining this business model is sort of all fine and well, except who's going to, pay for it, and there may be implications for these types of decisions. So I'd love to hear from Kiana and Parker, and of course, Derek and Frank jump in. What are implications, and that could be many different things, of creating restaurants or concepts that pay well and are equitable and are sustainable and are responsible, right? And any other words you want to insert. Good businesses are positive implications, negative implications, all of the above. So Parker, you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, all of what you just said, that's the future, and we can't run away from it. We need to realize that's the future. As we've all said and alluded to, we're not just in a labor crisis, and I hate that word. We're in a wage and benefit crisis, and we're in a major reset period that requires us to be so much smarter and more purposeful with our decision making. And there's no reason why creating restaurants that pay well and that are sustainable need to remain as single unit operators or have fewer restaurants. They just need to ensure they're smart and tactical with their brand strategy, menu, operations, store design, and their technology stack. All those things need to communicate together and work together in one direction. And what's really interesting during the pandemic is operators found much success with smaller menus that really celebrated hero items and cross-utilized ingredients at an extremely high percentage. They've realized you don't need 10 SKUs of bread on your menu. You can survive with 2 and use them in a few places. You don't need 15 SKUs of lettuce that's one's only used on an LTO. You can cross-utilize them at a very high percentage, and consumers are understanding of that. And you need to develop an operating system, like Derek said, that's able to efficiently flex up and flex down during off-peak day parts that can be run by 1 employee or 5. They don't get in each other's way. And instead of adding 15 steps for dropping off a delivery order, it needs to be a pivot in the kitchen. It needs to be a pivot for dining, a pivot for delivery, and a pivot for drive-through. That really all works together and does not make employees mad when they see a delivery order, because we all know, working in kitchens, sometimes you see things, you're like, dang, I wish this wasn't this way. And this all brings us to the store design, which really encompasses all of these factors of brand and menu and the operating system. And this really, the store design, it tells a story: material choices, the consumer flow, the touch points that are in there. A sustainable restaurant may be LEED certified, or may have viewpoints into the kitchen that may showcase fresh produce. You really need to showcase what you're doing to guests these days. And it all comes back to technology too, and being able to analyze and track data. If you're not on top of your data and realizing what your data is saying, it's really no good. It's a living, breathing organism that's changing every single day. And if you're really not on top of your data and realizing what the menu, operations, and guests are saying, you're not going to succeed in this day and age.
Yeah, first and foremost, think of it as a business.
Yeah.
not a joyride, right? So Kiana, I'd love to hear your opinion as well, sort of on implications of, yeah, I agree this is the future, but how do we create that, and you know, what might be the good and bad?
And, you know, I think we have to be real for a moment. What are the implications of not doing this? Oh, 1.5 million job openings right now. An industry that does not look so attractive from the outside or the inside in a lot of aspects. And I think what's most interesting for me is that the first part of the equation is that let's just raise our prices. Let's just raise our prices, and that's our answer. But you have to understand that there's that gentrification component of we're pricing out the community. And from the guest standpoint, it's really taking that step back and seeing the restaurant experience from a place of more gratitude, of maybe we don't eat out, you know, 60% of our paycheck because we want a higher quality. We want to bring a higher standard of living for those inside of a restaurant. And how do we award those who have their sustainability, as Parker mentioned, you know, with their LEED certification? How do we award the diversity, the equitable practices from a way that makes someone want to spend that extra dollar? Because you see a 3-star Michelin, oh yes, that's worth me giving all my money. However, do we take a step back and understand that there's a lot of staff back there that aren't being paid, that are doing this as a stage because of the name, because of its credibility? So how do we really have that conversation of, yeah, you know, I'm going to go to that restaurant because they're actually paying their employees. They're actually providing a living. And I think that's the first place from the guest standpoint. And then for us restaurant owners and consultants, like, how are we leaders? Like, how do we set a trend? Because you only have to be right once. It's not going to be something that's figured out by, you know, 2025, 27, 35. It's going to be a constant experimentation and moving it up and down. How well can we pay our chefs? And it's just experimentation. And if you're being a leader by saying, I'm paying my employees well, I'm practicing sustainability and diversity, that's not a bad way to go. So that's good. That's sort of where I feel from that.
Okay, can I add one thing to that if you don't mind?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. I apologize. It's usually an issue. But
I don't have my book.
I really believe that, to Kiana's point about raising prices, a really great example of a restaurant brand that just raised prices and did not get in trouble was Chipotle. Chipotle just raised prices by 5% for in-store dining and 10+% for their off-premise. But they did this alongside increasing their wages to $15 and increasing the benefit package for their employees. If they did this 3 years ago, they would probably get yelled at and we'd get mad. But because of what Brian, the CEO there, has done in the culture he's created, and when they announced the increase in prices alongside the push towards a better overall workplace, it was extremely positive, the response they got, and it has not affected sales at all. And that's a really great example of how you can increase prices, increase wages, and you used to be able to get in trouble. You used to get in trouble for that, but in the age that we're in now, it's all about marketing and the perception that connects with the brand of real food with integrity. It all comes together in this new age of restaurants today.
Can I just jump in, Kay, for a second?
Yeah, of course.
I really agree with Kiana and with Parker, and sorry, Kiana, if you wanted to say something, if I'm cutting you off here. I just wanted to touch on we touched on the word authenticity, and we talked about that from a restaurant perspective. And Chipotle is always a really great example, because they also decided not to use the machines to cut the onions, but to cut them by the hand and with a real knife, because it just provides a better flavor. And they absorb the cost, obviously, of paying the headcount to do that. But authenticity also has to do with how authentic are we allowing the customer to be when he's coming into our restaurant. So are we putting the customer in a box, or are we allowing the customer to be who he wants to be? If you would have gone into a 3 Michelin star restaurant, because we touched on 3 Michelin star restaurants a moment with Kiana, you would ask the customer to wear a jacket and a tie. If the customer is wearing a designer jeans that will cost you $2,000, you're putting this customer in a very awkward position. So I think we really need to pay attention to that, allowing the customer to be who he wants to be, and maybe to order what he wants to order at what time he wants to order. Maybe it's an all-day dining solution. Again, we have to think outside the box and creative how we can operate that, but that might be also the future. We touched upon omni-channel, and again, going into this more elaborate cuisine. Very interestingly, one of the really big palaces in Paris has ended a contract with a really high-end Michelin-starred chef, and now he's going with a very young chef that has won a Top Chef award in France. But what he's bringing to the table is not necessarily culinary excellence. What he's bringing to the table is leverage. Media leverage, because he is being surrounded by influencers, which he can attract into the hotel. So is that maybe also something we should add into our omni-channel strategy? How can we attract those influencers to get more, the media work for us? Because it is very difficult to do scaling in our business compared to IT business, for example. So that might be an opportunity. And then everything about lean operation is also something, from the way we set it up, building resilience, like Parker, you said, setting up a to-go counter, home delivery counter, and really making sure that we optimize the business. And maybe we created kiosk 2.0 that is completely autonomous, that we just plug in the authentic food and beverage offering, and customers can help themselves, and it's automated. Kind of creating those hybrid operations is something I think that we'll see pop up in the future. And if you look at Japan has always been doing this. They've always had these vending machines. They never had a 2.0 vending machine, but they've been very smart about this for decades. So this might also be something that we could see evolving in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And Frank, you're already mentioning some technology, but I'd love to know a little bit on your opinion of how technology will play a role in reimagining, right? Is there some back of house technology that you feel strongly or that's being utilized in France or in Europe? I think we're all fairly familiar at this point with, even if it's a gimmick of the robot, of the, locker, things like that. But are there any things you think are emerging or important for internal technology as well?
From our perspective in Europe, which is always kind of 10 years behind what's happening in the United States, which is true. You know, we're always very much more resilient a little bit to see what happens. But then, you know, the wave approaches. It's very much still focused on craft, on the craft of, you know, specialization, and we have a lot of more, like we mentioned this as well, like one dish wonders, right, popping up. Like you're really specializing on that dish that makes you famous, which has nothing to do with technology. So we're pretty much still very old school. I think maybe you know, maybe Derek, you have a couple of comments in regards to technology more than I could provide here at this panel. I just think that it was very interesting to read a couple of weeks ago. This is a colleague that sent me the information from Essec, that Kayak, you know, the online booking engine, they're moving into restaurants and they're moving into hotels. So they're building a Kayak hotel, a Kayak restaurant. So this is big tech now converging with hospitality, food and beverage. So if they are now moving into that space, I think there will be a huge learning curve of what they can add and provide, and to kind of tie all these individual comments that we've provided on this panel, it will turn into a best practice model, and it will just be a matter of time for other, you know, future generations or other business models to adopt that model and improve it and really accelerate that innovation process.
Yeah, that's a great point. I certainly do want to bring Derek in, not that no one's opinion is better or worse. But yeah, Derek, I know you have strong feelings on how technology will affect the future and the reinventing.
All right, well, finally my topic.
He's like, I'm ready.
Yeah, I think honestly, technology is like one of the common threads throughout all of these conversations. Is it touches every single piece of it, whether it's the labor, whether it's real estate, whether it's guest experience. Like technology is actually the core, you know, kind of infrastructure of what allows these experiences to happen. So I think what Frank said is spot on. Like there's going to be, you know, and Parker, around like just and actually all of you guys, but just like the brand. What brand are you going to have? Like what and how are you going to use technology to give your guests the experience they want? And I'm not going to take credit for this. There's CEO of Toast, former CEO of Toast, Steve Simone, still president and co-founder. Oh no, well, that's my current boss, Steve Fredette. Steve Fredette, real visionary, founder of Toast. What he used to say was, there's going to be, you know, technology is going to create a situation where 10 years from now, there's going to be food factories and food art. And there's going to be completely automated experiences where I just hit a button and food shows up at my door in 15 minutes. And that's inevitable. That's where consumer trends are. And if I want that convenience, that is going to be available. But if I want a high touch, you know, experience, that will also be available. I'm just going to have to pay a premium for it. And I think restaurants are going to have to figure out, where do they want to live on that spectrum? You know, my current company, we do QR code ordering and payments from the table. And, you know, and a lot of people talk to us around, that's going to eliminate jobs. That's going to change all the guest experience. Like I like paper menus. Like, great. If you like paper menus, that's the experience you want in your restaurant. You should only offer paper menus. And I think if you want to be completely self-ordering, you can be completely self-ordering. If you want to be hybrid and give a guest, you know, the choice of like, which menu would you like? Would you like to order with yourself? Would you like to order with a server? And give the guest the choice. And if they, you know, they come and they say, you know what, a completely self-service restaurant, not for me. I'm going to go to the restaurant that has more of a high touch. And I think the restaurants are going to have to figure out, where do they want to live on that spectrum? What kind of experience do they want to offer their guests? And I think it's going to become, you know, really synonymous with their brand. Like, you know, we looked at this 10 years ago, Red Robin, Chili's, Applebee's, they rolled out these kiosks, you know, on the table. It became synonymous with their brand. That's a restaurant where you can go and play games on a little tablet. And people go there because they want their kids to be able to play games on the tablet. So they, I don't need to bring my iPad. I already have one built in. So that is the experience they choose. And I think, also, Frank said this, like the one-hit wonders. I think a lot of restaurants are going to, in omni-channel, a lot of restaurants are going to choose, I actually want to do a little bit of both. I want to have my high touch experience, my premium offering come in the restaurant, we'll take care of you. But I also have, each one of my top selling items, I make a little virtual brand around it, and I can cross utilize all my ingredients and have 5 different ghost brands that come out the back. And I could order on an app, a couple buttons, and I'm getting a really well-made, affordable dish that's high volume out the back of a fine dining restaurant. And that's going to be the new norm. I think when restaurants, we're seeing this now, every business model has, they may want a high touch component, but they also have multiple revenue streams going out the back, whether it's catering, whether it's a virtual brand, whether it's they're leasing out their space to utilize, that kitchen space when they're not in a high volume dinner operation, and it's just sitting vacant the other 80% of the week. Like, how do you use that? So it's going to be interesting.
I heard someone say lately, they have not for over a year ended any conversation with either it'll be interesting or we'll see how this goes. So that's exactly how I feel about this.
None of it's settled. There's a lot of innovation happening right now.
Yes, absolutely. So to that point, I think we will skip to our last question to all of you. So we can go ahead and start. How about we start with Kiana? And that is really, what is a thing or a couple of things briefly that you're most excited about for the future of restaurants or of the food service space? Obviously, we've touched on food service being outside of just the 4 walls. So Kiana, you're the dreamer. What are you most excited about?
And, for me, I think it starts off with understanding that the last year gave us a privilege to understand our food differently from an individual, from a restaurant experience, and also just as a collective. And if it wasn't for that, where we had to, be at home and preparing dishes and truly savoring and understanding ingredients, we now can understand that we are willing to pay a premium for it. We are willing to try new things and be eager about that. So that's where I see the future of it from like a guest and experience standpoint. There is going to just be a larger diversification when it comes to reported cuisines and disruption along that line. And the other thing I think I'm most excited about is seeing, how do we really define what a restaurant is anymore and who's inside of it and what the role of a chef truly is. It's not just creating the art. And to Frank's point, it's bringing in influencers. It's that virality component. It's a crucial part of the equation now. And to see the creativity that's going to be brought, I am nothing short of excited and hungry for the next step.
Absolutely. That's awesome. All right, Parker, what are you most excited about? A lot, I'm sure.
A lot. And I'll try to keep this concise, but I want to echo what everyone's saying. And I think that as an industry overall, we're getting smarter, stronger, and we're still here. And I think that's the key. We're still here. We survived. We're happy and we're back and we're ready for guests. And I think that as an outcome of this pandemic, we've all realized, and guests especially have realized, the importance of restaurants to their communities and their daily lives. They're the community meeting place. They're where you meet with family and friends. They're where you celebrate. And they're such an integral part of our daily lives. And that's where memories are made. And I, of course, look forward to sharing more food and drink with family and friends as an outcome of this in the months and years to come. But acknowledge that younger consumers are pushing for a new heightened standard of excellence. They're really expecting restaurants to check all the boxes of hyper convenience, value, and authentic food and cuisines, all at the touch of a button at their phone. And they're really not willing to settle for 2 of those 3 or 2.5 of those 3. They want all of them at the same time. And I think that's really exciting. And with my focus on multi-unit concepts, I think we're going to see more concepts that are plant-based, authentic cuisines. And I think that we're going to see a growth of cuisines like Mediterranean. And if you said that 20 years ago, you would have thought that that's crazy. But I think that concepts like Cava or Luna Grill based in San Diego, I think those are the next type of concepts that are poised for growth across the country, and not just in millennial-based cities. I think that's throughout the country in the Midwest as well. It's going to be great to see those new types of food throughout. It's not just burgers and fried chicken and tacos anymore in our industry. And I'm also a little different from restaurants, but food service in general. I'm really excited for the growth of convenience store food service programs. I think that C-stores are realizing that food service is an extremely profitable and attractive business, and that the tobacco, beer, wine, and gas and petroleum is dying. It's dying slowly, so they have time to react. But the Wawa Sheets of the world are really eating the lunch and dinner of the Jimmy John's, the Subways, and the Jersey Mike's. And they're who to watch, because they're the ones getting food from the same exact commissaries as the biggest food service providers in the world. And their food quality is really great, and they're getting really smart, and they're hiring really great people. So I think that convenience stores are a huge place to watch for food service, and realize that they are a direct competitor that are going to influence consumers and really start to eat the sales of major food service chains.
I agree. It's a space I work in as well, and everybody rolled their eyes at these stores. Not only that, country clubs, I mean, retail, as Derek mentioned, right? Food service, food is everywhere at this point, and I think that's a very exciting thing. And I think we've traditionally seen that as a negative, right? They're going to eat for lunch, but it's actually great that you can get food everywhere. Now let's all, get competitive. So awesome. Thank you, Parker. Frank, where's your excitement?
I think we don't really have a choice, because it's such a mature industry. We have to eat to produce energy to be productive, right? I mean, it's there's no option. We don't have an option. It's just a matter of who's going to be the first mover of coming up with some really new, brilliant idea. I think quality is going to be improving. We have kind of a more accessible, high quality food products. We see it in these, low cost supermarkets that are all promoting the premium, which is really democratizing kind of the access to this, which is great. So I think in general, the quality should be really taken care of and looked at and will improve. As I mentioned, the convergence with tech, between tech and food and beverage. I think there's going to be a lot of creativity with new up and coming chefs, millennials that start out and that have great ideas. And I also think that this business is something you can start out very small. When you think about it, you can just start baking something in your own oven. You call it Uber Eats and it delivers it to your doorstep. So you can start with a small batch, and so it's cost efficient just to begin if you're really into it. I'm very excited about continued fragmentation. I mean, 20 years ago, you'd have fine dining, family dining, casual dining. Today, how can you categorize that hole in the wall selling like that one dish wonder, right? Or the Cronut in New York City. So it's all over the place, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to take us. I'm very curious how we're going to continue to share that dining moment as a family, as a group of people, where we sit down and we get together because of food, because it's such a heritage we have of how we consume food, to not lose that moment. And I think there's going to be new models popping up for that. And yeah, I just think we all have to get ready for a really, really good time. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Awesome. All right, Derek, close us out with your excitement.
All right, I'm going to try to finish on something very profound. So I actually, I'm the tech guy, and you're probably thinking I'm going to say something tech related, which I am really excited about. Everything tech, and that could be a whole podcast of itself. But actually, one of the things I'm actually really excited about is I'm actually a huge fan of remote work. And by definition, restaurants cannot be remote work. Somebody has to be there in the restaurant. And I think that's what's creating this quote unquote labor crisis is everyone went home, and everyone's like railing on, oh, the universal basic income, these checks, like nobody wants to go back to work. I think it's actually also, now the labor pool is fundamentally changed. Like before it was like a set amount of people in this town, that is my labor pool. Now it is, everyone went back home. They're getting jobs all over the place. And now you as a restaurant owner are actually competing with the whole world for that person's time and job. And I think that's a fundamental change in the restaurant industry that is really disruptive. And if I have a choice of getting a salary and working from my couch or getting paid $2 an hour, I'm working crazy hours. Like it's not that hard of a choice. And I think that this is going to force restaurants to pay a competitive wage and actually offer benefits. But that also is a constraint that forces restaurants to innovate. They have to change their model because pre-COVID, you couldn't, I've looked at so many P&L statements of the restaurant owners, and it was a matter of, if I offer my employees benefits, it goes from a 3% profit margin to I'm losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I literally cannot offer them healthcare, and they're in a really tough spot. This is now a forcing factor to pay staff minimum wage, change your business model, figure out ways to bring in new revenue streams, or implement technology just to be more efficient. Like pre-COVID, the business model wasn't exactly a great business model. If I have a choice between starting a restaurant with a 20% profit margin or starting a business with a 20% profit margin or a restaurant, which is going to be a lot of time and maybe 2% in the 90% failure rate, like it just wasn't a great business model to begin with. And I think this is forcing restaurants to rethink that. Just COVID blew it all up, and now we're trying to rebuild it from the ground up. We have a blank slate, and I think we're seeing a ton of innovation of how people are getting creative. And also, I think restaurant workers will be paid a minimum wage, like a living wage, and I think that's going to be a net good. There might be less restaurant workers, but the restaurant workers that are working in restaurants will be happier. And I think that's going to be, as we come back and restaurants are part of our communities, if I choose to work in a restaurant, I want to do it, because I love working in service, but also I can afford rent. And that before COVID was a trade-off. It's like, I want to work in a restaurant, but I'm going to scrape by with 5 roommates and biking an hour to work. And that was the life of so many restaurant workers pre-COVID.
Yeah, the words net good. I think you're very profound early in the morning there. I think overall that's where we leave it. Hopefully we feel like this industry is having a net good. So I so appreciate all 4 of your time and your insight and your excitement and your similar thinking. You all seem to have minds that think alike. I'm going to turn it over to Professor Leora to share a few questions that came in for the panelists.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you to our panelists and to our friends at Shaw. And for those who I don't know who are attending today, who I don't know, my name is Leora Lanz, and I'm a professor and faculty chair of our graduate program, which is launching this new restaurant management and experiences concentration. So thank you all for being with us today. There are a couple of questions that came in, Kay. First is from Casey Fuentes. Thank you, Casey, for joining us today. Casey wants to hear from one or more of you about the different technologies, the challenges of navigating the different technologies to manage the various aspects of the business, back of house, front of house, the online ordering, the loyalty, the kiosk. Frank, I see you sort of nodding. I don't know if you want to take that question. We do have a few more questions, so I want to make sure we get them all in.
No, again, I'm less on that really cutting edge technology, but I know it's not the gun, it's the man behind the gun, right? So you have to be able to know how to use the technology to make the best use of that technology. And there are so many systems out there, and it's also a risk of overkilling kind of the purpose of it. So it's you have to, I think, technology is great. outsourcing, subcontracting some components might be a little bit also a good idea. Instead of wasting your own time or hiring somebody to do that accounting job or to do some kind of an analysis. So that's why I was just nodding, because I think there's a lot of talk, but and technology is great, but it has to serve the operator as well, and it has to be as efficient as possible.
Let me just add to that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Parker.
When my team develops technology solutions, you can bring in the 5 best providers in their individual categories: POS, KDS, back of house management. And if they do not work together and integrate, it's completely useless. In the analogy that I use is, it's like developing your own car. It's like bringing in a Mercedes engine, Toyota doors, a BMW steering wheel, and bringing all these components together, and it might work and it might chug along, but it's really not going to get you very far. And it's extremely important to bring in technology when you're developing a restaurant concept in the beginning. And Derek probably knows, all these technology providers are just forgotten about to the end. And they're just kind of thrown in there and piecemealed in there. And it's extremely important to bring them in and ensure that everything can talk to each other and work. Integration is extremely important. And that's why a system like Toast that provides and has that great integration connections with so many of the best in class providers, not to sell Toast here, but they're really great. And that's why they're expanding, because they don't pay per integration there. And they have so many solutions that work together at a cost-effective rate. So I think it's really important to look at integrations when you're developing any technology solution to really ensure everything's working together in one direction, instead of having a car that barely moves.
And maybe if I can just add one point to that, I think that a lot of hotels are also moving into technology or adopting technologies that the customer really like using, right? For example, you will now find in hotels that don't have that a lot of food and beverage offerings, that they will allow customers to order off Uber Eats, for example, right? So that they can deliver. So you're putting the customer at ease, or you have some kind of an online purchasing. You have some kind of an online shop, and you're allowing people to order through WhatsApp instead of having them go through the online shop. So those are smart moves, I think, to make, to allow customers to continue using what they use best.
Fair enough. I'm going to move on to some of the other questions, and thank you, Parker and Frank, for those insights. This is coming from one of our alums, Aisha. She wants to know what advice you have for some of the F&B companies or industries that are still going through COVID struggles due to their own countries or locations restrictions with this rage of the virus. How can they have an edge and stay afloat with these challenges? Tough one. Any thoughts? Aisha, it sounds like we're all kind of afraid to go there, huh? This is a tough one. Any thoughts on how we kind of came through it here in this country, to see if there's any takeaways that we could share for folks in other destinations?
I think and I don't want to talk all here, but I think that it comes back to health, safety, and transparency with your consumers. I think that you have to have a strict guideline in place in the back of the house, and ensure that your team members feel comfortable back there. It was proven during the pandemic that brands like Starbucks that had high brand loyalty, people still went there. And that's because the trust they had in that brand and the operations, and they knew they could get there conveniently in a really that contactless free environment. I think adapting with technology and utilizing the QR codes and things of that nature can really advance brands, and it's really cost effective now. There's solutions out there that are extremely cost effective for QR ordering and ordering ahead that can really make it easy, but that's also extremely difficult if you don't have an efficient kitchen and a streamlined menu that go alongside that. And that's why it's all holistic, that streamlining your menu, having an efficient operating system that you can pivot and really serve all of these different ordering segments is extremely important. If you're still serving an all day and if you're a pizza concept, still trying to deliver burgers and fries, you got to take the burgers and fries off your menu. You got to just deliver the pizza. It's the best thing that delivers and holds up its quality. You got to know who you are. And I think that's the key.
Thanks, Parker. And Aisha, hopefully some of that, those elements in what Parker just shared helps with some of that advice that we're looking for. There's another question here that references, Derek, you mentioned that the pandemic really accelerated certain changes across the spectrum of restaurants. and you found yourself most grateful for having really progressed in that direction. Where do you see things that you're respectively putting your efforts towards? What do you think benefited most? What do you think sort of that acceleration, where do you think the most positives came from? We'll start with you, Derek, and if somebody wants to add.
Ooh, that's a good one. I felt like Chicken Little, like pre-COVID, like the sky's falling. Oh my God, these app companies are hurting restaurants. There's commissions, like people don't understand. Like when you order through an app, it's really bad for a restaurant, and restaurants are getting squeezed. And it was a slow burn. Like people didn't realize it. There wasn't much awareness. The amount of times I've had conversations, like even with my family, and I told them this, post all over my social media, and they still don't read it. They're like, oh, like DoorDash is bad for restaurants. Like, why? Like I should order directly? Why? Like, isn't that the same? And I think there's just an incredible awareness about this now. Everyone's talking about it. It's in the New York Times. It's mainstream. Like I think that's a good thing. And I think that's forced restaurants to also, that's forced consumers to think about how they order. And I hopefully they become more conscious about this and they choose the channels that support the restaurants, because the profits for that restaurant should not be siphoned to some guy in Silicon Valley. Like I'm a tech guy, like I get it. Like I want to support the restaurants. And I think, that has created an influx of direct ordering channels. If the press a button, get food in half hour was only available via an app, via Uber Eats. And I think that, what Parker said, the technology is getting incredibly affordable. And restaurants are realizing like this technology exists. Like I can have my own press a button and get food in 30 minutes channel without paying 30% commission. And restaurants are adopting their own first party channels. And Kiana, you mentioned this earlier, like how do you have your direct brands, your followers, like your direct channel to the guests, your direct messaging, Instagram, like that loyal consumer base, like how do you get them ordering directly? Restaurants are realizing that. So I think that's a good thing.
I don't know, Kay, if you want to sort of end with any last thoughts on what you might have even seen that accelerated, that was sort of a good thing coming out of this.
I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I think absolutely technology was at the core of all these conversations and at the core of every conversation that will be had now and forever in the future and should have been for the past few years. But also, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I felt like Chicken Little, but I feel very optimistic about the future. It's sort of a tough love approach. I think we probably all five share, which was, we've been saying this for years and it's not an I told you so, but it's certainly that the time has come for everyone to wake up about this industry and take it seriously, both from the guest perspective and from those working in it at the ownership and hourly level. So yeah, and to Kiana's point, it will be a daily, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day rebuilding that will hopefully be in the right direction. My greatest fear is that we go back to the way it was, and I think that's probably impossible at this point. So yeah, I think this is all great, and we already said this, we could have 5 of these conversations and still not cover everything. So hopefully everyone is talking about it, thinking about it, and there will be more of these, I'm sure, in fall and coming semester.
Well, on that note, we are at the 1 hour mark. So I really want to thank Kealoha for moderating this, an alum of our graduate program and a real supporter of our school. Thanks, Kay. And Derek and Parker and Kiana, our alumni, and Frank, our colleague in France and our alliance partner with our graduate programs. Thank you all for this conversation. And Kay, to your point, we could probably have many more of these and not even, hit everything with what's going on and the changes of the restaurant world. And for anyone on this call who's interested in learning more about our school or our program, feel free to reach out to our school, find our contacts through our website, bu.edu/hospitality. But thank you for joining us today. This was really thought-provoking and insightful. And as I said to Kay, when we were first talking about this conversation and planning this panel, we thought, oh, maybe it's different restaurant concepts we'll talk about. Well, clearly we didn't even go there. We just talked about what's going on in the world today and in society. And restaurants are a part of our society, and they have to be the center of our communities and the soul of our neighborhoods. And we need to pay attention to this. And I think everything we heard today, we just need to take full force and move forward with the future. So there's no going backwards. It's only going full steam ahead, Kay. So thank you, panelists. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. Thank you all for who support our school, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.